Hello everyone, back at it again in my little yellow kayak. I've got on a pretty good bite the last few days, or few weeks I guess now. And the bass are on herring, but they're not always chasing every morning. And those are the kinds of conditions that I have now. It's post front, partly sunny, pretty calm winds, and there's no fish showing at all. And that's the way it was most of the morning. A lot of guys will look at this and say they're just not active today or they're not biting, but they are. They're just subsurface. And the way I'm targeting these fish, I've got no electronics. I kind of figured out where they were, so I left the electronics at home. So you don't actually need electronics to do this, although they do help, at least locating in a general area where the fish are. Well, let me back up. In May and June, the fish were shallow. And then once the water started warming up, say early, mid-July, they pushed out to 15 feet. And it took me a while to find them after they pushed out of the 15-foot depth. But I ended up finding a pod of them in 25 feet. And there's a good amount of them. You know, I'm not getting them every cast. I kind of have to fish around. But I'm fishing with a jig and minnow, and they're pretty aggressive. I know it doesn't look like it just yet, but they are pretty aggressive. And when I can find fish that are pretty aggressive, I like to fish the Z-Man plastic just because I can fish all morning with one bait. It doesn't get torn up like a freeloader or any other plastisol bait. So one bait, as long as I don't get cut off by a pickerel, I can fish all morning. And I'm just doing this. I'm shaking the rod tip and reeling slowly. And they either come up behind it and they hit it like a freight train, or they kind of chomp it. I can feel them. They get it on the back crushers like a jig bite almost. And they goes chomp. Or they just come up behind it and load up on it. So it's kind of three different bites, and you can feel it if you've got a sensitive rod. You know, this rod isn't the most sensitive rod in the world. It's a 7-foot medium. It's a Dobbin Sierra. It's got the standard guides. They have another Sierra series with the micro guides, and I can't recommend that because your leader knot's going to get caught in those micro guides. So do not get the micro guide version of this rod if you're going to get it. Get the full size guide version. And the leader knots pass fine through this. TFO Professional is another good rod. But anyway, a 7-foot medium rod, 3000 size Shimano reel. Any of the long cast Shimano reels are great. That's a nice looking bass, by the way. He's been eating the herring and whatever else will fit in his mouth. Yeah, about 3 pounds. Any of the long cast Shimano spinning reels are great. I like the 3000 size. The long cast spool really does make a difference in terms of distance. You get a little bit more distance. It's hard for me to say for some reason. And with the Shimano reels, I feel like I can overfill them just a little bit, just a hair. With the Daiwa reels, I don't get as much distance. They don't have the long cast spool. Other than the old Daiwa SS series, which Daiwa never did anything with. Anyway, I have to underfill the Daiwa reels a little bit. Otherwise, they tend to puke up line until, they get to some kind of equilibrium and then they're cool. Mostly use Daiwa reels for short range stuff, panfish, trout, vertical jigging, drop shot, that kind of stuff. Anything with distance, I use the Shimano reels and with the long stroke spool. That's the key. So you put those two things together, and it doesn't have to be super high end, but decent quality. I would start at the Altegra and go up from there. You don't need the Stella. You don't need the Accents. It's another bass. Yeah, if you put it in front of them and shake it, they're coming up from 25 feet. There's a few fish that I saw when I did have my sonar that were suspended. And so there's some fish on the bottom. There's also some fish mid-column. say down 10-15 feet. And so with the minnow, I'm trying to fish all parts of the water column. And once these fish see the minnow shaking, I'm fishing with a Z-Man jerk shads or a Strike King Z2. They're basically the same bait, so I use them kind of interchangeably. There's another one. I'm fishing it in the deal color, but any kind of two-tone color that's vaguely shad-like or herring-like, it doesn't have to be a perfect match. And that's what I've got here. The deal isn't a perfect match. To me, it could be a bluegill, it could be a herring, it could be a lot of things. It could even be a perch. I don't know what they think it is, but they think it's food. At the very beginning of the video, you saw me, I was putting a little Procure scent on there. They get behind it, they smell that scent, and it just kind of seals the deal for them. That one jumped sky high out of the water. They're a little bit hard to keep pinned because I've got a 1/4 ounce jig head on there. And if they get up out of the water and start shaking their head and the jig head is outside their mouth, they can swing that jig head around back and forth and get free. So it's very important, even when they jump, you got to keep constant pressure on them. Otherwise, they can easily throw the hook. You're going to lose some, but that's okay. If you're on a good bite, you can just catch another one and keep rolling. So 7-foot medium action rod, Shimano spinning reel, size 3000 is what I like. You can use 2500 too. The 3000 has a bigger handle, which I like. I've got large hands, and the bigger handle I just like a little bit better. And I'm shaking that rod tip as I'm reeling slowly. That's really all there is to it. Every once in a while, if I feel like I'm getting too high up in the water column, I'll let that bait glide, and sometimes I'll shake it on the way back down to bottom and then start my retrieve again. So you don't need electronics to do this. It does help locate them initially, but once you kind of figure out where they are roughly, you can come back and do this without electronics like I'm doing here today. There's another nice one. He's a little bit longer, maybe not quite as fat as the first one. But he's chewing on those herring. Tried to bite me a little at the end. He didn't want to let go and go back in the water. One thing that I'm not showing right here, but sometimes there's a little bit of weed on the bottom, deep grass, that kind of stuff. So a lot of times when I fish it, I cast out, let it hit bottom, and I'll give it a couple sharp pops right off the bottom. You also got to pay attention. So I've had a few fish, they pick it up on the fall as it's falling to bottom. And this thing with a 1/4 ounce tungsten head and kind of a streamlined body, it falls pretty fast. So they'll pick it up on the drop, or as you come tight to it on the bottom, or as you pop it off the bottom. And I'll pop it, I'll give it like 2 fast reel turns and a couple sharp pops with the rod. And that's if I'm tangled up in some weeds, some light weeds, sparse grass, that kind of stuff. I'll rip it right out of the grass. And sometimes just that initial surge off the bottom, that's what those fish are looking for. Like if one started to swim over, I try to picture what's going on underwater. It kind of helps me get more fish in the boat. But if one of them kind of watched it fall but didn't eat it, and then it scoots off the bottom with a sharp pop or 2 pops, a lot of times that can trigger them. And then what I do is just that slow reel, the slow turn of the handle, and I'm shaking the rod tip constantly. It's not a crazy amount of shake. I'm moving the rod maybe an inch, maybe a little bit more, as I'm slowly turning the reel handle. And they come up and track it. There's some fish busting right at the middle top of the screen right there. I got a fish on right now, so I can't cast to them. And that was the only topwater action all morning. And I happened to have this nice smallmouth on, so I'm not complaining, but I couldn't get on them. It's kind of a 2-part system. I've got a topwater bait on the front deck. That's Storm Chug Bug, the larger size. And I put braid split rings on there, or braid loops. That's a whole nother video, but with the braided loops on that chug bug, it's really hard for the fish to throw a chug bug, and that's one of those baits that works really well. It's a classic, it's been around forever, but it's also one of those baits where I feel like the fish can throw it a lot more easily than some other baits. And that's even if you upgrade the hooks, even if you're careful, even if you try to keep tight on them. It's just a bait that I feel like the fish love it. It hooks them well, but it doesn't stay in their mouth real well. They can throw it, and I think it has to do with that ball that's in there. It swings around, and anyway, with the braided loops instead of split rings, it makes a big difference. I'll do another video on that at some point.
Nice cooperative fish. Doesn't jump and pull the hook.
Once again, I got no fish showing. I can cast into where the fish were busting earlier and pick up a few others. You know, there's no fish showing at all, but I can still pick them off. It's funny, I've seen them feeding long enough to know how they act, and usually they bust up high for, you know, not very long, say 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds, and then they immediately drop back down. Some of them will even drop back down the bottom. If they're in deeper water, they'll kind of suspend. If they're in shallow water, they'll go all the way to the bottom, say like 10 feet. They'll bust the herring or whatever bait fish, and then they'll immediately drop to bottom. And I don't know if they're doing that to avoid, you know, predators like ospreys and eagles, or they're trying to pick off herring that might, or shad or whatever that might be falling to bottom. But I've seen it over and over again. You know, they bust them on top and then they drop back down. So you might think, well, they're still within 3 feet of the surface. In general, that's not how it works. They go back down, and then if you have like a top water, they'll come back up for it. I got another one on right now. He's pulling pretty hard. We'll get him in the boat though. So this jig and minnow thing, it's been a real helpful technique for me. Calm water, clear skies. I'm still catching fish like that one. And it's just a great technique. Cover a lot of water, catch a lot of fish. Alright, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list the gear in the video description. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!